Ladies and gentlemen, there's something you need to understand before you even think about touching the dream. Before you dare to approach it, before you dare to whisper its name in the quiet of your heart, you must understand the price. The dream will not bow to you. The dream is not gentle. It does not yield to wishful thinking, nor does it grow in the soil of laziness. The dream is forged in fire, sharpened by pressure, and built brick by bloody brick by those who understand one sacred rule: there are no days off. You think you can rest, don't you? You think you've done enough because you showed up for a week, because you suffered for a month? You think progress works like a punch card, like you clock in, do the time, and then success walks up to shake your hand? But life doesn't work like that. It's indifferent to your intentions. It's blind to your comfort. It's watching, not for when you show up once, but for whether you keep showing up when the lights are off, when the crowd's gone, when your bones ache and your mind screams for relief. And that's the test. That's where the real thing begins. The war doesn't start on day 1. The war begins on day 10, on day 30, when nobody's watching and the reward hasn't shown up yet, when the excitement is gone and the obligation remains. When you realize this road is a staircase with no final step. You climb because that's who you've decided to become. You grind because the alternative is death, not the kind that puts you in the ground, but the kind that turns your spirit to ash. Understand this. The man who takes days off will always be beaten by the man who does not because the other man is more talented, not because he's more blessed or born into better circumstances. No, it's because he made a covenant with suffering, a pact with consistency. He made discipline his companion and decided that his dreams were too precious to be left in the hands of comfort. He said no to ease. He said no to excuses. He said no to the impulse to retreat. There's a reason the greats seem possessed. There's a reason they look different when they speak. It's not just ambition. It's sacrifice. They gave up the world to win their own. They went to war with the part of themselves that begged for peace too early. They buried their laziness. They buried their softness. They buried every part of them that asked for a shortcut. And what rose from that grave was someone unstoppable, someone immune to failure. Not because they never fail, but because failure doesn't make them quit. You must ask yourself, what would your life look like if you stopped negotiating with effort? If you didn't allow yourself to back off when it hurt? If every voice inside you that whispered, "take a break," was met with one simple answer: not today, not ever, because every day matters, every rep matters. Every hour you put in is a vote for the man you're trying to become. It's not that rest doesn't matter. It's not that recovery isn't real, but what matters more is the mindset behind it. Rest when you've earned it. Rest like a soldier sharpens his sword, not like a coward runs from battle. Rest with purpose, not with guilt, and not as a disguise for laziness. The world has sold you the lie of balance. It told you to live a little, to relax, to give yourself grace. And yes, there is grace, but there is also consequence. Grace without accountability is poison. It rots your potential while dressing it up in words like self, care, and mental health. But there's a difference between healing and hiding. A difference between regeneration and regression. You know when you're lying to yourself. You know when you're using kindness as a shield from the truth. The truth is simple. No one is coming to save you. The truth is that success has no sympathy. It doesn't care about your story. It doesn't bend for your feelings. It respects only the relentless, and it belongs only to the obsessed. This isn't fair, but it is true. And if you live by truth, you will outlast everyone living by comfort. Every time you want to quit, remember that weakness is seductive. It'll sing to you like a siren. It'll tell you you've done enough. It'll remind you of how far you've come, but that's a trap. It's the serpent whispering to Eve. The moment you listen, you lose, because you didn't come this far to come this far. You didn't survive hell to stop in the hallway. You didn't bleed just to bandage it up and walk away. This isn't about hustle culture. This isn't about chasing some hollow definition of success. This is about honor. It's about dignity. It's about becoming the kind of man you would follow into battle. The kind of man who makes promises and keeps them, especially the ones he makes to himself. Because if you can't trust yourself, you can't lead anyone. If you can't lead yourself, you'll always be a slave to someone else's vision. Your potential is not your destiny. It's your burden. You weren't given gifts so you could feel good about them. You were given gifts so you could multiply them, so you could take them, plant them in discipline, and let them grow through toil. Every great man you admire became great because he suffered on purpose, because he chose pressure, because he believed that character was the only thing that lasts when everything else burns away. What you do when you're tired, that's who you really are. What you do when nobody claps, that's your truth. What you do when the reward is invisible and the struggle is daily, that is your legacy in the making. Stop thinking you're owed anything. Stop hoping for a break. Stop waiting for someone to validate your effort. There are no days off because life doesn't take a day off. Death doesn't take a day off. Time doesn't take a day off. And the man who understands this becomes immortal, not in body but in impact. His name lives on because his work echoes through time, and it echoes because it was built without excuses. Ask yourself, what if you gave everything? What if, for once, you stopped holding back? What if you looked at your reflection and said, I'm done negotiating with weakness? You would become someone you've never met before, someone terrifying, someone magnificent, someone capable of moving mountains because he no longer lets them stop him. Every morning is war, and the battlefield is your mind. You wake up with two choices: lead or follow, rise or fold, dominate or decay. You decide whether today is another page in your story or just another excuse on your pile. And every time you choose discipline, you carve your name into history. Not the kind they put in books, the kind that lives in people, the kind that changes rooms just by walking into them. You don't need motivation. You need principles. You need to operate by law, not emotion. You need to build a code so unshakable that even on your worst day, you're still better than most people on their best. That's what no days off means. It's not about grinding until you collapse. It's about building such a strong inner world that no storm outside can touch it. Do not ask the world to be easy. Ask yourself to be stronger. Do not wish for less pressure. Learn to breathe under it. Do not pray for shortcuts. Pray for stamina, and when the pain comes, greet it like an old friend. Because pain is proof that you're alive, and growth is proof that the pain was worth it. You don't become a champion by accident. You become a champion because every day you do what cowards won't. You say yes when it hurts. You keep moving when it's dark. You rise again when the world counts you out. You become someone who cannot be broken, not because you're special, but because you're disciplined, because you understand the sacred truth. The man who never stops moving cannot be stopped. So go, build, burn your excuses to the ground, bleed into your craft, sweat until your spirit screams, and when you feel like quitting, smile. Because that means the transformation has begun. That means you're close. That means the old you is dying and the real you is almost here. There are no days off. Most people misunderstand what freedom is. They think it means doing whatever you want, whenever you want, however you feel. They think freedom is the absence of rules, the absence of structure, the removal of all responsibility. But that's not freedom, that's chaos. That's indulgence dressed up as liberty, real freedom. The kind that shapes kings, warriors, and builders is not found in the removal of boundaries. It's found in the mastery of self, and that mastery is born through discipline. Discipline is not punishment. It's not suffering for suffering's sake. It's not just waking up early or grinding nonstop. It's the alignment of your actions with your highest values, your long-term vision, your true potential. It's the agreement between who you are and who you want to be. When you choose discipline, you are choosing to take control of your own evolution. You are choosing to build a life instead of react to one. The man who is ruled by impulse is a slave. He may feel free, but he's not. He's chained to whatever craving, emotion, or distraction passes through his mind that day. One moment it's laziness, the next it's fear, then pride, then comfort. He's not living, he's drifting, He's at the mercy of the wind, and that kind of life will never lead to greatness. You cannot create anything meaningful without structure. You cannot maintain purpose without direction, and direction comes from discipline. There is a reason ancient warriors were trained with routine. There is a reason monks rise at the same time every day, follow the same patterns, speak only when necessary. It's not because they lack individuality. It's because they understand that freedom of the soul is born through order. Through controlling the body, they strengthen the mind. Through controlling time, they master presence. Through saying no to the 1,000 temptations of the day, they say yes to something eternal. You want freedom, then control your appetite, control your time, control your reactions. Freedom is not found in giving in. It's found in saying no when your lower self screams yes. It's found in training your instincts to follow your vision. You want to eat clean, then discipline says no to the sugar. You want to get stronger, then discipline says yes to the gym when your body aches. You want peace, then discipline says no to the gossip, the noise, the poison of modern distraction. It's not glamorous, it's not loud, it's not celebrated. But the man who has mastered discipline carries something in his eyes that no one else does. He walks into a room and the air changes, not because he demands attention, but because he doesn't need it. He's anchored, he's calm in chaos, he doesn't flinch when others panic, because he's been through fire of his own choosing. He's sacrificed pleasure for purpose. He's given up comfort for character. Discipline creates space. When your mind is ordered, when your days are structured, you can think clearly. You can act deliberately. You can see opportunity that others miss because they're too distracted. You can execute plans with precision because you've already rehearsed the cost. Discipline removes the noise, it silences the weakness, it gives you back your life, one action at a time. The world will never give you permission to be great. It will never slow down long enough for you to find your balance. So if you wait until you feel ready, if you wait for someone to tell you it's time, you will wait forever. Discipline is the tool you use to take the moment, to seize the day even when the conditions are imperfect. Because guess what? The conditions will always be imperfect. That's why discipline exists. It's the bridge between you and the goal. It's the proof of how badly you want it. The truth is, most people want the rewards of discipline without the price. They want the body but not the reps. They want the business but not the hours. They want the peace but not the silence. You cannot have the crown without the cross. You cannot receive what you haven't earned. And you cannot earn what you refuse to sacrifice for. Discipline is not something you find. It's something you build, brick by brick, day by day. You don't wake up with it. You cultivate it. You start small. You keep promises to yourself. You choose the hard thing when it's easier to look away. And over time, it becomes who you are. You stop needing to try, you just do. Because your identity is now built on consistency, not emotion. That's the secret. Discipline makes you dangerous because it turns you into someone who acts regardless of the weather. While others wait for the sun, you build in the rain. While others are motivated by praise, you are fueled by vision. You don't need someone to tell you you're doing great. You already know you're on the path. You don't need a pat on the back. You're already miles ahead because you didn't stop when they did. People ask, how do you stay motivated? But that's the wrong question. Motivation is emotional. Discipline is structural. Motivation is a visitor. Discipline is a resident. It stays when you're tired. It stays when you're lost. It stays when the world is on fire and you still have to move. Discipline is the part of you that doesn't blink when it hurts, the part of you that holds the line when everyone else has dropped the standard. Freedom without boundaries is self-destruction. Freedom without accountability is a fantasy. Discipline sets the boundary that allows you to flourish. It gives you the foundation to build dreams without them collapsing under the weight of inconsistency. And it will cost you everything you don't need. The pride, the ego, the fear, the procrastination. They don't survive in the presence of discipline. You either let them die or they kill your potential. Discipline is not rigid. It's adaptive. It bends when it must, but it never breaks. It allows for correction, not complacency. When you fail, it teaches. When you fall, it rises. It's the loyal soldier of your soul, the gatekeeper of your greatness. Without it, you wander. With it, you win. Not because the path is easy, but because you've decided that difficulty is no longer a valid excuse. You are not at war with the world. You are at war with the part of yourself that wants to quit. And the only way to win that war is with discipline. Not once, not occasionally, but daily. Every decision becomes a vote for the man you want to be. Every sacrifice becomes a seed planted in the soil of purpose. And one day, long after others have faded, those seeds will bear fruit that no one else can touch, because you watered them with consistency, protected them with standards, and fed them with relentless effort. Discipline is not about being perfect. It's about being faithful. It's about showing up broken, showing up tired, showing up even when the fire's gone, because you understand that the process doesn't ask for feelings. It asks for loyalty. To the craft, to the calling, to the mission that made you choose this path in the first place. And in giving it your loyalty, you find the one thing the world cannot offer: real, unshakable, earned freedom. The world is full of people who were born with brilliance they never learned how to wield. Talent lights the spark, but without consistency, that spark never becomes a flame. You've seen it yourself. Men with all the gifts in the world, sharp minds, strong bodies, potential so loud it echoes when they walk into a room. But that potential rots in silence because they never learned how to show up every day. They never learned how to master the boring, repeat the basics, or build their lives on unglamorous repetition. Talent is impressive, but consistency is unstoppable. The illusion is that talent will carry you, that once people see how gifted you are, doors will fly open and the world will move aside to let you pass. But the truth is, the world doesn't move for talent, it moves for results. It respects output. It rewards the man who endures, not just the man who dazzles. And endurance is not born from talent. It's built by daily choice, by the refusal to disappear when it's not exciting anymore. Consistency is brutal because it asks for everything and gives back slowly. It doesn't reward you on day 1 or day 10, or sometimes even in the first year. But it builds something inside of you that talent never can. It builds trust, trust in yourself, trust in your process, trust in the fact that showing up regardless of mood, motivation, or external praise is the most powerful force you can possess. There's a reason the greats talk more about discipline than passion. Passion fades. Excitement fades. Talent, if left unused, dulls. But consistency compounds. It multiplies in silence. It sharpens through action. Every time you do the work, even when it doesn't feel like it's working, you're stacking bricks no one sees. Until one day the wall stands tall and the world calls it an overnight success. But you'll know the truth. You'll know it came from blood, repetition, boredom, and patience. Most people fear boredom. They run from monotony. They believe that if something doesn't feel new, it must be wrong. But mastery lives on the other side of boredom. The man who can outlast boredom, who can turn routine into a weapon, who can stare at the same task for years and still refine it, he becomes invincible. Because while the world is chasing the next trend, he's building an empire with stones they've already forgotten. Consistency is not loud. It doesn't shout for attention. It doesn't flex in the mirror or post about the grind. It's silent, ruthless, private. It lives in the early mornings and late nights. It shows up in the gym when no one else is there. It shows up in the studio, the notebook, the job, the business. Again and again, long after the applause has died, and that's why it wins, because most people only show up when they feel like it. Most people chase momentum. They chase comfort, they chase validation, but consistency doesn't care about feeling. It doesn't care about mood, it operates on principle. Talent is seductive. It makes you think you're different, that the rules don't apply. That you can skip steps, but you can't, not in this world. The laws of growth don't care about your potential. They care about your habits. They care about whether you did the work or not. The gap between where you are and where you want to be is not bridged by talent. It's bridged by daily, unrelenting effort. And the man who understands that has an edge that no natural gift can compete with. Think about the gym. The strongest man in the room isn't the one who had the best genetics. It's the one who didn't skip leg day. The one who showed up on the cold days, on the tired days, on the days where his mind tried to talk him out of it. The man who never gave his body a chance to forget what it was being trained for. That's consistency. That's how strength is built. Not by a single great workout, but by 1,000 ordinary ones stacked without excuse. The same is true in every arena: business, art, leadership, relationships. You don't build something meaningful by waiting for perfect moments. You build it by hammering away at the stone again and again until the form begins to reveal itself. And you do it knowing that most of those swings won't feel like progress. But you do it anyway because you're not in love with the feeling. You're in love with the result. You're in love with what consistency makes out of you. People will always overrate talent because it looks good in the beginning. But look at the end. Look at who lasts. Look at who's still there when the noise fades. It's the man who refused to disappear. The man who refused to make excuses. The man who refused to let time pass without putting in the work. He may not have started with the most, but he made the most out of what he started with. And now no one can touch him. Not because he was the best, but because he outlasted everyone who was. Consistency makes you dangerous because it removes the question of whether or not you'll show up. That decision is already made, and once that decision is made, all that's left is execution. You don't need to hype yourself up. You don't need external motivation. You don't need someone to believe in you. Because you've already committed, you've already decided, and that kind of man, the committed man, is a rare and terrifying force. The world is full of talented men who are ghosts now. Men who were praised early but never followed through. Men who had potential but never paid the price. Don't be one of them. Don't fall in love with the idea of who you could be. Build it. Every day, with intention, with grit, with the kind of quiet consistency that eventually becomes undeniable. Because when it's all said and done, they won't ask how gifted you were. They'll ask what you built. They'll ask what legacy you left. They'll ask if you kept showing up, and if the answer is yes, if you can look back and say, "I never stopped," then you've already won. You didn't need to be the best. You just needed to be relentless. You didn't need to be chosen. You just needed to refuse to quit. You didn't need talent. You just needed to be consistent. Excuses are the most seductive lies you will ever tell yourself. They are dressed up in logic, covered in emotion, wrapped in justifications so clever you almost believe them. They sound like reason, they sound like wisdom, but they are the language of decay. Excuses are the chains that keep you average. They are the quiet killers of greatness, the subtle poison in the bloodstream of potential. Every time you give in to an excuse, you trade your future for your comfort. You trade your strength for your fear. And over time, those small trades add up to a life that is less than what it could have been. The truth is simple, even if it's not easy. You can have results, or you can have excuses, but you cannot have both. Excuses and excellence do not share the same home. One must be evicted. If you want greatness, excuses have to die. They have to be hunted down and destroyed before they take root in your mind. Because once they grow, they become your identity. You're no longer someone who missed one workout. You're someone who always finds a reason to skip. You're no longer someone who needed a break. You're someone who never finishes. That's the danger. Excuses don't just cost you progress. They change who you are. You weren't born with excuses. You learned them from the people around you, from the culture that told you life should be easy, from voices that said failure is someone else's fault, from schools that praised your effort even when there was no result, from systems that celebrated mediocrity and made discipline look like oppression. But somewhere inside you, even when you made excuses, you knew you were lying. You knew you were capable of more. You knew you were just afraid of paying the full price for greatness. It's not your fault if life hit you hard. It's not your fault if you weren't born into opportunity. But it is your responsibility to rise anyway. It is your duty to stop using what happened to you as a reason to stay small. Pain is real, but it doesn't give you permission to be passive. Setbacks are real, but they don't justify surrender. Everyone has a reason to stop. Everyone has a story that would excuse failure. The great ones just choose not to use it. Excuses are easy to make because they sound right. You're tired, you're busy, it wasn't the right time, you had other things to handle, people didn't support you, you weren't feeling inspired. All of that might be true. But greatness doesn't require perfect conditions. It doesn't ask for permission. It demands action, and that action is rarely convenient. It's rarely comfortable. That's why so few people taste it. Because excuses feel better than discipline. Until the bill comes. And that bill always comes. You have to get to a place where you are violently allergic to excuses, where you can feel them rising in your throat and you shut them down before they leave your mouth. You train yourself to speak the truth even when it hurts. You train yourself to say, I didn't make it happen, instead of, it wasn't my fault. Because owning your failure is the first step to earning your success. And if you can't take ownership of the gap between where you are and where you want to be, you will stay stuck in that gap forever. There's no power in excuses. They rob you of your agency. They tell you the outcome was out of your hands, that you were just a victim of circumstance, that the world is too unfair, the mountain too high, the enemy too strong. But those are lies told by the part of you that's afraid, the part that doesn't want to risk rejection, the part that would rather fail safely than succeed painfully. And you cannot let that part win. You cannot build a life from fear. You build it from fire. The fire inside you knows you're meant for more. That's why you feel uneasy when you don't give your best. That's why it bothers you when you see someone else winning and know deep down that you could have too if you hadn't quit. You don't hate their success. You hate the part of you that made peace with being less. And that part of you must be killed, not with shame but with truth. Not with guilt, but with commitment. You don't need to punish yourself. You need to rise, and you rise when you stop feeding excuses. Every excuse you make is a rejection of responsibility, and every rejection of responsibility is a step away from power. If you want to be powerful, you have to take full control of your life. Not partial, not conditional, full. Even when it's not your fault, it's still your responsibility, because that's the only way to grow. That's the only way to learn. That's the only way to rise above the average, the weak, the excuse makers who always find someone else to blame. There will always be a reason not to. There will always be a story you can tell yourself about why it's okay to slow down, to take the day off, to lower the standard. But every time you tell that story, you reinforce the wrong identity. You become a man who tolerates weakness, who justifies mediocrity, who accepts comfort over challenge, and you don't get to become great by accident. You have to earn it, you have to fight for it, you have to bleed for it. And that means burning your excuses to the ground one by one until all that's left is action. When you're tired, you act. When you're scared, you move forward. When you fail, you take the lesson and keep going. That's how champions are made, not by perfect days, not by easy wins, but by ruthless commitment to progress, no matter the obstacle, no matter the doubt, no matter how justified the excuse may sound. Because you understand that excuses are just lies that feel like truth, and truth is the only thing that builds something real. So ask yourself what excuses you've been making. Be honest, be brutal, write them down. Look them in the eye, and then kill them, not with talk, but with action, with follow through, with one more rep, one more page, one more hour of focus when the world tells you to quit. Replace every excuse with effort. Replace every doubt with discipline. Replace every apology with action. And when you do that, day after day, failure after failure, fight after fight, you become someone no excuse can control. You become someone whose greatness isn't dependent on conditions. You become the kind of man who builds legacy, who sets fire to his own limitations, and who earns the right to look in the mirror and respect what he sees. Legacy is not something you declare. It's not something you speak into existence with loud words and false confidence. Legacy is what remains after everything else fades, after the noise stops, after the lights go off, after the audience leaves. It is what echoes in the places where no one saw you grind. It is forged in the hidden hours, in the early mornings, in the late nights, in the moments when no one else is watching and you still choose to show up. The world will see the results, but it will never fully understand what it took to get there. Because your legacy is written in the dark, it's easy to look impressive when eyes are on you. It's easy to post your progress, to flex your effort, to project discipline when the room is watching. But that's not where greatness is born. That's not where character is built. That happens in private, when you don't feel like it, when your body aches, when your mind tells you it's okay to skip today. That's where it counts, because that's where the decision is real. There's no applause, no validation, no reward, just you, the work, and the mirror. And that's when you find out who you really are. The problem is most people are addicted to being seen. They want recognition before they've earned it. They want praise more than progress, so they shine for the camera and dim in the silence. But legacy doesn't care about how loud you were. It cares about how real you were. It cares about how often you followed through, how often you kept your word to yourself, how often you did what needed to be done even when no one knew you were doing it. Because those are the moments that form the man. Those are the moments that shape history. The ones who leave a mark are the ones who worked when it was quiet. They didn't need a stage to be consistent. They didn't need followers to be focused. They didn't need the world to notice in order to do the right thing. They were already committed, already sold out to the process, already decided that who they were in the dark mattered more than who they appeared to be in the light. And that's why their legacy lasts. Because it's not built on attention. It's built on action. There is a sacred power in the unseen, in waking up before the sun and putting in the work when no one knows your name, in saying no to the temporary thrill of distraction so you can say yes to the long-term weight of purpose. It's not glamorous, it's not fun, it's not easy, but it's pure, because when you grind in the dark, there's no one to lie to, there's no one to impress. You're left with truth, you're left with discipline. You're left with the cold, honest reality of whether or not you're willing to suffer for what you say you want. And that's the test. That's the standard. It's not how loud you can talk about it. It's how quiet you can stay while doing it. It's how many nights you can put your head down and choose growth over comfort. It's how many mornings you can move before the world moves. It's the ability to stay consistent when no one is cheering. Because that silence is sacred. That silence is where legends are born. The man who earns his legacy is not chasing attention. He's chasing transformation. He knows the camera won't catch the real work. It won't catch the tears, the doubt, the fatigue, the isolation. It won't catch the moments when quitting made more sense than continuing. But those are the pages where legacy is written. Those are the chapters no one will ever read, but everyone will feel when you walk into a room. Because true legacy carries weight. It cannot be faked. It cannot be fabricated. It's the product of decisions made in the dark and carried with honor into the light. Your habits when no one is watching are a prophecy. They foretell the man you're becoming. Every choice you make in solitude is a seed, and the world will eventually see the tree, but the roots are in the hours they didn't see, the pain they didn't feel, the discipline they didn't notice. So stop trying to prove anything to them. You don't owe the world your explanations. You owe it your excellence, and excellence is born in obscurity. Most people will never understand why you go so hard, why you say no to comfort, why you walk away from distractions, why you push yourself like no one is watching. Because they're not, and that's the point. You do it because greatness demands it, because vision requires it. Because legacy is not a performance, it's a process, and that process is sacred. The moments that define you are not always the ones they see. Sometimes it's the night you wanted to quit, but you didn't. The morning you felt empty, but you moved anyway. The season you felt invisible, but you built anyway. That's where the story is written. That's where your future is being carved, not in the spotlight, but in the shadows. You are being watched, but not by them. You are being watched by your future, by your children, by the man you're trying to become, and they will know if you faked it. They will feel it in the foundation. Either it's built on real commitment, or it will collapse. But if it's real, if it's forged in the dark, if it's built with quiet consistency and brutal honesty, then it will last. Then it will stand when everything else falls. There's a reason the greatest men are often the quietest. Because they've seen what happens when you let the noise in. Because they've lived in the dark long enough to know it's where power is made. You don't have to announce your journey. You don't have to explain your grind. Let your results speak. Let your legacy echo. Let your work reveal what your words never could. The dark is not your enemy. It's your ally. It's the training ground. It's the silence before the storm. Embrace it. Use it. Become the man who doesn't need the world to believe in him because he already believes in himself. Become the man who leads himself first, who holds the standard when no one is watching, who doesn't crumble without an audience, because when that man steps into the light, the world will feel the weight of what he did in the dark. The goal is not to be seen doing the work. The goal is to become the kind of man who does the work regardless of who's watching. Because that man is rare, that man is dangerous, that man doesn't need credit. He creates impact, he doesn't chase fame. He builds foundation, he doesn't talk legacy, he lives it. And when he's gone, his presence will still be felt, not because of what he said, but because of what he did when no one was looking.